Hello and welcome to the Stew with JT Brew on the Dynasty Pros Football Channel. I'm your host, Justin Taylor. It is Cut Down Tuesday in the NFL. Teams across the league making their final cuts before the season started. All kinds of fantasy impact. Who went where? Who might end up signing with someone else? We got all kinds of stuff to talk about going across the league. Stick with us here as the Stew begins now.
You up on trades and why you move, you ain't designed to lose. Find you jumping over seemingly nothing, racking up points, makes the game a little more fun to watch. Can drop release, we started with the mock draft and now we making a mockery of the leaderboard. Quite obviously not a scrub, so start an institute, make evaluations like a commissioner do. It's to the point your wife make you watch in a different room. Update your roster and pick and choose when you get some news. Not much that we enjoy more than sifting through your statistics to make it to our end zones through different routes. Universities, institutes, down to homies who click in groups. I introduce you to the Stew with JT Brew.
Once again, thanks for joining us here on the Stew. I've got my guy Brendon Booth from Dynasty Pros Football and a writer for Player Profile. Thanks for jumping on tonight as we're going to talk all the cuts in the NFL. I appreciate you coming on the show.
Thanks for having me. There were 1,100 cuts today, so something's got to be important.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy with the way the NFL has kind of adjusted things where they used to have the set cuts downs, throughout the season after every preseason game. And they kind of did away with that. They kind of said you can cut and make moves and you don't really have to go final roster till the very end. And so we saw, like you said, 1 million cuts a day. We're going to kind of highlight some of the big name stories, kind of what's happening. And, just some of these guys we either like, maybe your favorite player got cut, maybe your deep sleeper got cut, but I wouldn't jump off on them too quickly. Wait and see. The waivers are going to run. We're going to see who's going to get picked up where. Definitely some still fantasy relevant players out there. But we got to jump into it. Anybody who knows me knows I am a Colts season ticket holder. Jonathan Taylor, one of my favorite players. He was the story of the day. The Colts unable to trade star running back Jonathan Taylor. Instead, they decide they're going to put him on the PUP list. 4 weeks minimum he has to sit. He is out the first 4 games. It doesn't matter if they trade him or not. I for one, was shocked by this move. I thought they'd either make the trade or they'd take him off the PUP list so they could either play him or they could trade him to someone else who could play him right away. Kind of what did you think when you first heard the news?
Well, it kind of begs 2 questions. Number one, were they unwilling to trade him or were they unable to trade him? And the other is he really hurt? I think all signs kind of point to Jim Irsay playing games, and that's troubling just because of the running back environment in the first place. But you kind of have to think maybe he really does have an injury and he can't get out there. And if that's the case, then 4 weeks off is going to do him some good anyway. He might lose you a couple weeks in the first 4 weeks, but then once he comes back, he's going to be Jonathan Taylor, and you're going to be okay.
Yeah, I think for me, if there wasn't all the drama surrounding it and they said, hey, he needs the 4 weeks, we don't want him fighting this injury all year. We're looking out for his overall, health and safety, and we want this guy for the end run of the season, I would feel a lot better about it.
Right.
For me, though, this seems like, is this just the Colts going kind of an FU to Jonathan Taylor going, hey, man, you say you can't play, you say you're hurt, we're just going to put you on the PUP list. We're just going to do that and we'll see what happens.
Yeah, that's the part that worries me is that it's that mentality of you're not putting your best guys out on the field to win football games, which is the whole point of the NFL. You're playing games with contracts, you're messing with people's livelihoods, and you're setting a precedent for the rest of the market. There has been so much controversy about running back contracts this year that, does this play into that? We saw Saquon Barkley and Josh Jacobs there, and Tony Pollard threatened to hold out, eventually didn't and signed his tender. But if that's the environment the running backs are in, how does that affect everybody going through? How does that affect what the union does? There's so many implications beyond just you have a guy that was hurt and we're keeping him out. It was, let's be petty and, not follow through on trades, not let him go to where he can do the best for his career and his livelihood. So that's the troubling part to me is if this is all games. Now, I don't necessarily buy that. That's, digging into conspiracy theories, but I think he's just hurt, and Irsay knows that he has something valuable.
Yeah, and I'm hoping, this is business. Teams do this. These things kind of happen. You're hoping that it just doesn't get to the point where it's just beyond repair. Where if the Colts come out and they finally say, "Oh, you're healthy. We do look at you. The trainers look at you. We think you're good to go." We do want to eventually offer you a pretty good contract. We want to keep you here. You're hoping that all this back and forth just doesn't absolutely bury the relationship between Jonathan Taylor and the Colts. I'm hoping it's not. I'm hoping it's more of a in the media thing and less like these guys are really hating each other in the background. I'm hoping that's the case, but you just never know. For fantasy purposes, I all over JT, took JT everywhere, took JT in every redraft league, took him in every keeper league, took him in every, best ball league or, charity league I was in. I was buying the dip all summer. When everybody was worried about him, I was like, oh, give him to me in the second round. Let him drop to me in the third. I was taking him everywhere, and now I just have full exposure across the board with him. And now for the first time, I'm really, really worried. I know I don't have him the first 4 weeks, and now I'm worried about does this turn into a Le'Veon Bell situation where you think, okay, he's going to sit out the first couple weeks, and then he's going to be like, all right, man, I want to get paid. I'm not going to sit out and not make any money. And then all of a sudden the guy sits out the whole season, and it's just an absolute disaster. I don't think I'm prepared for it yet. Emotionally, I'm trying to figure it out. But, man, it's like, you hate to see guys in their prime sit out like this. I hope he gets healthy. A guy who's never had injuries his whole career until last year. I hope he's able to bounce back. It's not for the Colts. I do really like him as a player. I hope it's somewhere else that's good. But, man, those fantasy shares right now, if I hadn't already traded for him a bunch, I'd probably be sending out a million trade offers, seeing if I could get him even cheaper now.
Yeah, I sweated through the same thing with Josh Jacobs. I basically was, like you said, buying the dip, taking him when other people were scared. And I'm a Raiders fan, so I know what we've got. And he was RB1 last year. So I just spent the last month basically with white knuckles going, he's going to come back. He's going to come back. And fortunately for me, I came out on the better end of that. And the other Jacobs owners too, they came out on the better end of that. But I know plenty of people who are really devastated by the JT news.
Yeah, I got some Josh Jacobs shares when he was kind of down. People were worried about him. I know skipped him in a couple earlier drafts of the year. I was like, oh, man, I don't know. Do I want to take him as my RB1 in the second round? And I skipped over in a couple leagues, but there's a couple other leagues I jumped in and took him when he fell far enough, and now I'm really happy about it. Going from there, the big topic, of course, if JT's not there, what do you do with this Colts running back room? Who are you taking? Are you picking someone up? How much is worth someone? I got my thoughts on. I want to hear your thoughts first on kind of what you would do as a JT owner looking at the running back room, trying to find a handcuff or someone on the waiver wire.
So in my dynasty leagues, I've targeted Evan Hall just because I like him for the long term. Given the ages of Deion Jackson and Zach Moss, I went for the younger guy, but that was, handcuffing in the 18th, 19th round. In redraft leagues, if I'm looking for somebody to replace JT's numbers in the first 4 weeks, Deion Jackson is the first person I'm looking at. Zach Moss had a broken arm, so it's going to take him a while to get back. They think that he might be ready for week 1, but he's got a broken arm. You can't really rely on that. And Evan Hall is a good pass catcher, so he might be playing the third down role. So I think Deion Jackson would be the guy that I would look at as far as being the starter and getting the fantasy points. But in Dynasty, I'm all over Evan Hall. That guy totally showed out during the combine, and everybody loves his athletic profile and his receiving ability and his speed. He should be, if he gets the right opportunity, a legit running back in the NFL. So for dynasty purposes, he's the guy that I'm looking for.
I'm 100% agreement with you on Evan Hall. He's a guy I love. I'm in Big Ten country. I saw him play for Northwestern with some terrible teams. And I was on message boards and I was in Discords telling people, man, Evan Hall, You got
Look
to
at
watch
this
out
guy.
for him. This guy, he's got skills. He catches the ball. He plays for a terrible team, and he's still putting on 1,600, 2,000 yard seasons together, combined. And I was like, everybody always talks about receiving profile for running backs. Man, the guy had an unbelievable receiving profile in college. So he's the
Total
guy I want.
package.
Yeah, he's the guy I want in Dynasty, like you said. Absolutely. PPR leagues, I want him in PPR leagues because he's a guy, if I can play as my second running back in bye weeks or because of injury, or I can put in a flex, I think the Colts are going to be down enough that he's going to get a lot of catches. And he should be getting a decent amount of handoffs, when they're running those 2-minute drills and stuff. Non-PPR redraft league, like you said, I think I'm on Deion Jackson. Especially if it's a non-PPR, like a half PPR league, Deion Jackson's going to get enough carries that he might get you a few points. I would go him. I obviously would be looking somewhere else because I just think without JT, it changes everything this team wants to do. And I think it changes everything the way defenses are going to play them. I just think they're going to stack the box, try to keep AR from running and make him throw the ball. So it's a tough call. I'm definitely not relying on Deion Jackson, but that's where if I'm going to go say I need some fantasy points, I think Evan Hull's the guy because I just think he can he could get 5, 6, 7, 8 carries plus 3, 4, 5 catches a game and get you where he's at least scoring you 8 to 12 points, and maybe he gets you a touchdown. So I agree with you there on Evan Hull. I had a couple drafts that were coming down to the wire here in the last week, and I was just like, I'm taking it. If it was even if it was a redraft league, I was taking him as a late pick going, you know what? I'm a little shy on running backs. He's a guy I'm going to grab with my last pick or close to my last pick, so like that. So, guys, we won't get into and talk a lot about, but to keep in the back of your mind, Kareem Hunt, Leonard Fournette, still both out there, probably the two biggest names out there. With all the cuts happening, it's going to be interesting. We might throw in, as we get through this list, we'll talk about, hey, maybe we could see one of those guys going there. But let's kind of jump into the other running backs. We're going to go in position here, guys. Since we're already started with the running backs with JT, we're going to jump in there. The Ravens backfield. We'll start with that. Everybody's kind of figuring out who's going to stay, who's going to go. They cut Melvin Gordon. So if you're on Keontae Mitchell, who really showed out before the injury, he's the guy that you're really happy about because he made the Final Four, and only in front of him is Dobbins, Edwards, and Justice Hill. And we've seen Justice Hill has had a million opportunities and hasn't really proven himself. Gus Edwards has had some injuries. So if you're a Mitchell guy, are you just super pumped about this, seeing Gordon gone and him making it as the fourth running back?
Again, yes. In Dynasty, when you get into the dart throw rounds in your startup, or if you're like looking in late in the rookie drafts that are still going on, I just had one last night. If you're looking to handcuff Dobbins in Dynasty, absolutely Keaton Mitchell could definitely fill that role. He's another guy with a really nice athletic profile coming out of college. The problem that you have is that you have teams that are only carrying 3 or 4. So when you have an influx of 10 running backs that really could do a job, some kind of job in the NFL, they kind of don't become fantasy relevant. But if I'm a Ravens fan, I'm loving that Keaton Mitchell's on that roster. Kind of the same as Zamir White in Las Vegas. You know what he can do. He just doesn't have an opportunity to do it yet. So get Keaton in your dart throw rounds, stash him on your bench, put him in your taxi squad, and just wait for the rest of the Ravens running back room to fall apart like they normally do, and you could have a gem there.
Absolutely. I love it. Another guy, interesting, 4th, 3rd round pick, Trey Sermon. The Niners cut him. He ended up on the Eagles. He actually looked fairly decent in preseason, had some nice carries, looked okay, but that again, like you said, that running back room is stacked. They got a ton of players now with Rashad Penny, Kenneth Gainwell, DeAndre Swift. I mean, they're loaded at running back there. He got cut. He's a guy that if I have on a taxi or in a deep league, I'm holding him right now because I could see someone else coming out and picking him up. I'm just not ready to completely give up on him yet. What do you think about Trey Sermon?
I'm the opposite. He is toast in my mind, and I wouldn't throw a dart at him. He's coming from a situation where you had Kenneth Gainwell last year, who every time I saw him come into a game, I'm like, why is he not the bell cow in this offense? And he yes, he's a little bit small, but he has every single skill that you want. And they kept running to Sanders, and then they kept giving the ball to Boston Scott, and they kept 4 running backs in that room. And Kenneth Gainwell, to me, was the superior running back that the Eagles had. So this organization constantly screws with running backs, and if they don't think that Trey Sermon can cut it, I don't think anybody should think that either.
I like that as an interesting take for sure. I'm holding them in a
fall
few
from
situations, but I'm like right there again. I'm only if I've got room am I doing it. If not, I'm done with them as well. A guy that was a kind of a preseason darling, Deneric Prince from Kansas City. Everybody was talking about him. Everybody thought, hey, is this guy going to be the new Pacheco? Is he going to get some shots? They cut him today. Be interesting to see if they try to bring him back on the practice squad, or if somebody else goes out there and grabs him. What do you think about Prince?
I have a feeling that somebody's going to grab him on waivers. He was one of the top 2 or 3 UDFA running back contracts the Chiefs gave him. That's guaranteed money. So he come into a situation like that, and you see this guy with his athletic profile. He had the best athletic score of any running back in the combine. He's 6'2", something, 245 pounds, and he runs a 4.4. Like, this guy is an absolute monster. He just so happened to work his career in Tulsa, and so he kind of was under the radar. You can't argue the fact that 7 rounds of the NFL draft happened without him getting taken, but he was given a premium contract as a UDFA. I love Deneric Prince. I love all of the camp hype that started coming out about how he was catching the ball. I don't know if it's something where he wasn't really picking up pass blocking very well. Maybe the Chiefs are thinking that they can squeak him through waivers just because he did go undrafted. But I have a feeling that I'm not the only one who's in on him, and some NFL team like the Lions or the Patriots are going to swoop him up in the waivers tomorrow. I think noon is the deadline, so we'll find out all those cool stories. But I had like 7 shares of this guy, like pretty close to 33% of my managed leagues. I was taking him with my last 2 round picks, him and Sean Tucker. I was like grabbing them everywhere, and broke my heart when I saw that he was waived. I was just devastated about Deneric Prince. He was my guy this year.
We'll jump in here. Sean Tucker, my guy. Love Sean Tucker. He was one of my highest rated backs coming out until the heart stuff and everything happened with the pro day and the NFL draft, and he went undrafted. I still love him. I still think he might be more talented than Rachaad White technically as a running back. I was pumped to see that he's getting time. He made the roster. It sounds like he was nowhere near getting cut, which I love to hear there for the Bucks. So he's a guy, if you're in leagues right now when you're just drafting rookie drafts, or you're a league that's a little bit deeper looking to get some guys, I love Sean Tucker. I think he could easily end up taking over the number 2 role there. And I could see where there's a chance that White turns into a little more of that third down back that everybody thought he was going to be coming out of college. And Tucker takes maybe some of those more first, second downs. So I love Sean Tucker. He made the team easy, which, after going undrafted, that was a little bit of a scare, but I'm glad to see he made it through easy. I like him a ton.
Yeah, he most people had him with a 3rd round grade on him coming out of Syracuse. I took him and Prince with my last 2 picks in the Scott Fish Bowl. So I'm definitely high on both of those guys, and glad that Tucker got his opportunity, because apparently his heart problem isn't that big a deal.
Yeah, I think he is just a great stash. I think he's going to end up having a good career. I'm grabbing him everywhere, absolutely everywhere. You brought up you brought up the Lions with Prince. He's a guy, I like where your head's at on him maybe going there. They cut Benny Snell and Muhammad Ibrahim, the rookie out of Minnesota that people were talking about. They kind of liked him in camp. Thought he was playing well. Benny Snell, the ex-Steelers running back, both those guys cut today. That's a team that looks like with Jahmyr Gibbs and Montgomery, excuse me. I always call him David Montgomery. Those are 2 guys that could end up, they're going to be the main guys, but I could see them bringing in a 3rd back.
Right. It was surprising the number of teams that cut down to a minimal level of position players, you have to think that they're looking to pick up waivers. You have to think that they're looking to, maybe they've been in discussions with Kareem Hunt, like we were talking about before. They have to have a plan because you can't play a full season with just Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery. They have to have something on the burner that they're thinking. So you have a high profile cut like Deneric Prince or a free agent running back who's left over like Leonard Fournette. Those guys would fit perfectly, and you have to think that they're doing something like that.
Snoop Connor cut by the Jags today. A guy I don't have a lot of, but he was a big kind of deep sleeper last year. He was cut. Patriots, a team that people are really talking about. We always talk about the running back room in New England. They're using everybody. You can never count on anyone. Rhamondre Stevenson getting a ton of hype coming this year. They just signed Ezekiel Elliott. So, already people are worried now, little Zeke. Then they made a couple moves today. They cut Kevin Harris and Ty Montgomery. And in the last couple of days, they traded Pierre Strong to the Browns. So they already got Zeke. What are they doing over here? You got to think they're bringing in somebody else again as well.
Exactly. That's another one of the teams that I was thinking of. They only have 2 running backs in that room. So what's on Belichick's mind? What is he cooking? I don't think he wants another 5th or 6th year, late 20s guy like Hunt or Fournette. So maybe he's looking to grab somebody that can just be a body in the running back room off waivers, and we'll see tomorrow morning.
Yeah, for those still doing rookie drafts and even regular drafts taking people late, the Titans put Hassan Haskins on the commissioner exempt list. He's a little banged up, but he also has some off the field issues. So he's on the list. That wide open the door now for Tajay Spears, the rookie out of Tulane. I saw him getting grabbed late in a bunch of redraft and keeper leagues in the last 2 weeks in drafts I had, where people kind of looked down. They're like, man, who's out there as a good handcuff? And people were just like, oh, yeah, Tajay Spears. I should. And, I'm like, oh, I should have been on him 2 rounds ago. What was I thinking? But I think Tajay Spears is one of those guys. If Derrick Henry gets banged up, they're going to run the ball. I think Tajay Spears has looked really good. I wasn't high on him early on coming out in the draft process, but he's changed my mind. He's a guy I want to get if I don't have. And if I got Derrick Henry, I want him bad. I want that handcuff.
Yeah, I definitely missed on Spears. I understand his talent. I know how good he is. It's just the injury reports came out, and he doesn't have a meniscus in his knee. He's had knee problems for the last 4 years in college. And that wasn't with my draft picks and my rookie drafts. That's not a chance that I was willing to take. Although I do understand Henry's age, but I mean, he's resetting the curve as far as running back ability at his advanced age. I don't think he's going to slow down at all this year unless he starts getting dinged up, misses a couple games. I don't see a catastrophic injury in his future. So going into this season, I was looking for the Texans didn't draft anybody. There were a couple of teams that didn't replace or didn't draft somebody in hopes of replacing the back that they already had. I was looking for the Titans to do the same because they had Hassan Haskins and Julius Chestnut already. I thought both of those guys were capable of filling in the gaps if something ever happened to Henry. But obviously they saw an opportunity with Spears. They are the Titans. I am me. So they know more than I do. And I whiffed on that one completely. But everywhere that I can try and get him now, I am. As a handcuff to Henry, he looks so explosive in the preseason. And that's one of the things. I don't really take much preseason stuff to heart, especially statistics. But when you watch a guy who is playing against second and third teamers, look at how explosive they are. Look at how foolish they make the backups look. Yes, you can put together a nice game against second and third teamers, but are you really making them look like you're playing amongst children? And Tajay Spears made everybody that he was playing against look like he was just in a whole another league. So as far as film study goes, Spears has it, and he should be pretty good.
Yeah, like I missed out on Spears as well. I was not high on him coming out because of the injuries like you, and I missed that on him everywhere. An interesting backfield all offseason has been the Minnesota Vikings. They move on from Dalvin Cook. Alexander Madison's never been the workhorse. They're saying, hey, he's going to get a shot to do it. They draft Dwayne McBride, a guy really successful in college running the ball out of UAB. Guy, I no catching profile whatsoever. So people are like, what can he do? What he can't do? He's a guy I thought might actually push Madison there a little bit. Nope, he's out. Already cut. Did not look good in the couple preseason games he played. Ty Chandler, who I wasn't super high on, I just kind of felt like he was more of a special teams guy. He actually looked pretty impressive in the couple games they gave him time. So he looks like he's possible the RB2. They had brought in Abram Smith, the XFL star, guy who led the league in rushing, looked really good in the XFL. You thought maybe he'd get a shot. He was cut today as well with McBride. So that's another landing spot. Do you see a Kareem Hunt or a Leonard Fournette maybe end up in Minnesota?
I don't think so. I think with Kene Nwangwu, who's primarily a kick returner at this point, but he does have size. He is younger than Chandler. I've always been surprised that he hasn't taken the job away from Chandler. I am not high on Madison at all. I went on another show and he was my bust. He hasn't ever been good. He was just waiting for a volume opportunity behind Dalvin Cook. He finally got it. But he's not an efficient running back. I like Tyson Chandler. He had a good draft profile coming into the league. What surprised me was Abram Smith, because Abram Smith's draft profile was very, very nice. And then he went undrafted and decided not to sign with anybody, or maybe he signed with somebody and then left, got cut. But he didn't play any games last year with anybody, and he went to the XFL and showed that he does have some skill. So I was kind of surprised. I think if they needed to have somebody, he probably would have stuck. But I think they're pretty much set at this point in their eyes with Madison and Nwangwu and Chandler. And I'm in a slow draft. Right as I'm writing my piece about Justin Ross today, I see it come across that Dwayne McBride has been waived. And then I look down and the guy in my slow draft took McBride. Tyson Chandler was first in my queue and I was 3 picks away. And I just prayed and prayed and prayed. And he fell to me and I got him and got a whole lot of heat in the chat because so many guys were waiting on that pick. And he didn't fall farther than me, luckily. So I like Ty Chandler a lot.
It's nice when it falls that way for you. That's for sure.
Yeah.
It always sucks when you're the guy that takes. I had a lot of leagues where I was the guy that took Andrew Luck right before he retired. So I've been on the other side of that thing, so I know how it goes. So I'm glad you got Ty Chandler there. That's awesome. A couple other disappointments. A guy that I've always really liked. I just want to see him get a shot. He's going to have to try to go somewhere else. Tyler Beatty from Missouri. Mm-hmm. I loved him coming out at SEC, led the SEC in rushing on not a great Mizzou team. I just thought, man, this guy has got skill. He's tough. He's going to eventually make it somewhere, at least as an RB2 in the league. Started with the Ravens, cut by them. He came in the camp as the RB3 for the Broncos. I thought, hey, this might be a shot with Javonte Williams with the injury. Signed Samaje Perine. I was like, maybe they'll hold on to him. He was cut today, so interested to see what happens with him. I've got a few shares I'm just holding on too tightly to see if something happens with him in deep leagues. But he was cut by the Broncos today. Another name that kind of floating around the last year or so was Malik Davis for the Cowboys as a possible backup. They cut him today. One of the bigger names, somebody that everybody liked him, was a darling in the playoffs last year, Zonovan Knight for the Jets. So he was a big pickup late in the season for people when they had injury problems at running back. He actually got a cut. It'd be interesting to see if he's a guy that on waivers a bunch of people are looking for or not, as I think he showed a little bit of skill, last year. And that's just such a deep room after adding Dalvin Cook to Breece Hall to Michael Carter. I think they just ran out of roster spots.
Absolutely. And Breece Hall is, I think, a little bit more ready than his thighs are the same size now. He's cutting and stuff. I think he's a lot more ready than people who are fading him want to believe. I think Brees is ready. But yeah, Zonovan Knight he was a great pickup last year off waivers and helped a lot of teams. And if he can do that again this year with a different NFL team than the Jets, then I think he's definitely worth keeping an eye on, seeing if anybody gets him picked up, and then stashing him on your roster. Malik Davis was a heartbreaker.
Yep.
I picked him up last year thinking I was, ahead of the curve, and apparently Rico Dowdle, he and Deuce, they convinced Jared that Malik was expendable.
So that's pretty much the major running back news from the weekend, or excuse me, from cut day today. Let's jump into QBs. Not a huge, a lot of surprises outside of the New England Patriots. The Patriots was the one that seemed to shock everybody, as Bailey Zappi, a guy that I've got a ton of Bailey Zappi. I thought he was going to push Mac Jones for that starting job. I thought it was just a matter of time before he got another shot. So I was stashing him everywhere. And then everybody's favorite rookie out of Louisville, Malik Cunningham, who looked pretty good in some preseason games, he was also cut. And at this point, they're sitting with Mac Jones as the only QB on the roster. Very interesting move by the Patriots here.
It's crazy. So they have to be thinking something. Again, Bill Belichick is, he's making moves behind the scenes. I picked up Zappi last year in a 2-quarterback league when Mac Jones was hurt, and Zappi outplayed Mac Jones. And so immediately in my head, Bailey Zappi was better than Mac Jones, just didn't have the draft capital. He was waiting for his opportunity. And then they released him, which came as a total surprise to me. And then this year, Malik Cunningham was the running darling of the New England Patriots preseason, and now he's gone. So maybe they think that somebody's going to sneak to the practice squad because there's so many quarterbacks that are out there already and nobody's looking for one. But both of those guys are extremely talented. And if I'm an NFL GM outside of the Patriots, especially somebody with a high waiver pick, I would much rather have Bailey Zappi or Malik Cunningham in my room than, Colt McCoy, who eventually got cut, Josh Dobbs, those guys that have kicked around for a while that just don't have it, but their bodies in the room. I'd much rather bank on somebody like Zappi and pick him up off waivers. So really puzzling what Bill's thinking this year. And maybe Bill O'Brien has something to do with it too. Maybe somebody's not picking up his offense the way that he wants. But they didn't really have an offense last year. So maybe Zappi just couldn't cut it. I don't know what's happening, but those are, again, 2 more guys that are extremely talented to keep an eye on and see what happens if they get picked up.
Speaking of the Cardinals and Josh Dobbs, if I'm the Cardinals, I'm like, I could have got Bailey Zappi in a trade instead of Josh Dobbs when they cut. I would. If I'm the Cardinals, I would have been all over trading for the exact same trade that they made and getting Bailey Zappi instead of Josh Dobbs. I mean, that blows my mind. We saw Colt McCoy just got cut, was a big cut last week. Josh Dobbs was in a trade, so they picked him up. A guy who's been in the league forever, former Steelers player. A guy I like personally, but I just don't understand why they made that move to trade for him unless they think he can help coach a guy up. I just don't understand why you would trade and start him. It's very confusing to me. My guy has been my guy. I tweeted out the night of the draft when they took Clayton Tune. I said, this is QB1 for Arizona this year with the Kyler Murray injury. I'm like, mark it down. He's going to start. And people thought I was crazy. I was like, I love Clayton Tune. And again, I think this team's going to be bad. I don't think it's good for him personally. But if I'm them, I want to see if he's got anything. I'd rather get a guy out like Clayton Tune out there, let him play and see what you got out of him instead of taking a 10, 12-year veteran like Josh Dobbs or Colt McCoy. You know who they are. I mean, they can maybe win you a game here or there and play okay, but there's just no point not to play Clayton Tune. And I'm hoping the Colt McCoy cut and the trade for Josh Dobbs is just that. We want Josh Dobbs to kind of mentor Clayton Tune. We want him to talk to me. We want to be there in the room and have a backup. And we want to get rid of Colt McCoy because we want it not to be a question between him and Tune. We want it to be Tune's job until Kyler Murray can get back.
Sure. And maybe in the meantime, they do something along the lines of what Atlanta did last year, where they started Mariota, but they always knew that they were going to bring Ritter in at some point. So maybe they're doing that with Tune. And the other thing is that it is a new regime in Arizona, and a lot of people don't know that Clayton Tune actually has rushing upside as a fantasy quarterback. He did rush in college and had, quite good success, and he's pretty fast. So if you have an offense that's designed around uh, Kyler Murray, you can get into it seamlessly. I mean, Josh Dobbs is probably a little bit more athletic than Colt McCoy, and I can understand that. But you can get into that offense with Clayton Tune, more mirroring what Kyler is able to do as far as working off platform and creating out of nothing and things like that. Because that's really what Kyler is the best at, is when he gets pressured and he runs out of the pocket and he starts creating plays, that's when he really cooks. And I can see Tune having that. One other guy with similar draft capital is Aiden O'Connell from Las Vegas, and both of those are kind of like put into the same bucket. But O'Connell doesn't have the rushing upside that Tune does. So if I'm looking for somebody to kind of like stash deep, I'm putting Tune on that roster. The other thing is that with that regime, Kyler's not their guy. Kyler was Cliff's guy. So they are really not obligated to hold him after this year. So maybe they go in and they're tanking for Caleb. They're trying to get Drake May, whatever. Tune is going to be at least a good backup behind that new quarterback that they have last year. I definitely see Kyler moving on, but I'll take a chance on him late, like I did earlier today. And he was my fourth quarterback, but we'll see what happens when he gets back, because he's still got talent. It's just not a great situation at this point for him.
Yeah, talking about O'Connell, not a guy that got cut, a guy that made a roster for the Raiders. Definitely, if you got Jimmy G and you're in a super flex or a 2 QB league and you need just a little bit of backup help just in case, O'Connell might be a good guy to pick up. He looks really good. I saw him play a bunch at Purdue, again, being in Big Ten country. I was more impressed with him as a junior than I was as a senior, but he's actually looked really good. He's reminded me in the preseason of the guy that junior year everybody was talking about, like, this guy could push for, Big Ten first team all quarterback with CJ Stroud. So he's looked pretty good, and they seem to like him a lot. Brian Hoyer's in that room, but we know who that is. He's there for experience and talk guys through. I mean, if they get into a crunch, they're going O'Connell. They're not going Hoyer. He's a guy that I wasn't taking a bunch of, but him and Tune are the two guys that I want to stash if I'm in a rookie draft or any kind of 2 QB league where I need to get some QBs in my taxi squad or someone I might need a desperation start out of. Those are guys I'm looking to add.
Yeah, and O'Connell had a similar situation to Sam Howell in that he had a really, really good junior year, and then he lost David Bell. He lost some pieces, and suddenly, things weren't quite as great, which allowed him to slip in the draft. But everybody still had a higher round grade on him than he actually wound up going with the Raiders. So I didn't bring him up as a topic. I was more trying to contrast him with Tune. But yeah, I love Aiden O'Connell. He is my guy number 2. I would not be upset if they started him over Garoppolo, kind of like starting Tune over Dobbs. I always like when you want to see what a young guy can look like instead of just rehashing the same old stuff like Howell last year in Washington. Why go through all that process with Heineke and Wentz when you have Sam Howell right there? Put him out there. See what you can do. Look what Kenny Pickett did. He took over for Trubisky. They should allow the quarterbacks to do that. So, I'm kind of high on both those. Probably higher on both of those guys than I should be.
I agree that I'm probably the same. I love Tune, and I'm jumping on the kind of bandwagon pretty quickly. A couple other things to note here on QBs. Will Grier, even though he played well for the Cowboys during the preseason, He's been cut after they made the trade for Lance Young. They still have got Cooper Rush, so he's out there in Dallas. Buffalo Bills, they put Matt Barkley on IR, which means that Kyle Allen is officially Josh Allen's backup. If I have Josh Allen in a 2QB or a Superflex league, I'm jumping on Kyle Allen. If he's out there on my waiver wire, I want him. It's good offense. Kyle Allen is a playable guy if you get into bye weeks and get in trouble. So Kyle Allen's a guy I would definitely look at picking up. The Bears, I'm in Bear country as well here, just south of Chicago. Very interesting moves today. They cut P.J. Walker and Nathan Peterman. P.J. Walker, they gave a bunch of guaranteed money to and signing in this offseason. It was kind of a strange deal. You figured, okay, well, he's obviously going to be the backup for Justin Fields. They cut both those guys. My guy that I really liked coming in as a sleeper, Tyson Bagent, the D2 Player of the Year at Shepherd, has the NCAA record for touchdowns, 159 over all divisions. He won the Harlan Hill Player of the Year award, which is basically the D2 Heisman. The guy has some major skills, and we saw it in the last couple preseason games. He can run, he can throw. He threw for like 5,000 yards. I mean, the guy's got some skill. We don't usually see it. I was hoping they would hold him as a practice squad guy, and I am pumped that the Bears held on to him. I stashed him in some deep, like 14, 16-team leagues where I didn't have a lot of rookie draft picks, and I took him late. He's a guy you're not going to see a lot of fantasy value out right now, but he's an interesting pickup late, and if you got room to stash him.
Yeah, and what's interesting about the smaller divisions, the D2, the 1AA, the FBS, a lot of the guys that are there because of grade issues. They're there because maybe they weren't big enough when they were in high school and weren't really recruited. They found a program and wanted to stay loyal to it. So you have some gems that are there. Trey Lance came out of North Dakota State. Carson Wentz came out of North Dakota State. My hometown school, UC Davis. We have a long history of putting quarterbacks in the NFL. JT O'Sullivan, Ken O'Brien, Kevin Daft, Mike Morosky, all these guys came from Division II schools. There is a lot of talent out there. So there's no reason to think that just because some guy's from a smaller school, a lesser division, that he can't come in and immediately compete because they're out there. They just may not get the look. So Bagent is another guy that you got to keep an eye on him. You keep track, and as soon as you get an opportunity, somebody in your roster goes down, somebody gets elevated to your taxi squad, grab him on waivers and stick him in there and hope that, his career comes to fruition, because that kid can sling it and he can run, and he's just like bursting with talent. He's pretty good.
Yeah, I actually looked up a couple things about him. He was looking at West Virginia. He looked at a couple places to transfer, decided to go back to school there at Shepherd, stay in school instead of go D1. And, one Player of the Year again, just put up unreal stats. So he's definitely a guy that's got talent. Other kind of random cuts, Bengals cut Trevor Siemian. People kind of thinking with the Joe Burrow injury news, maybe he would be a guy, but they cut him. And then National Championship game player Max Duggan for TCU, drafted by the Chargers, had him. They cut him today. It looks like they're going to keep Easton Stick as their number 2 QB. So I know some people were on Duggan as a possible sleeper. We'll see if he gets picked up by someone else, but he got cut today by the Chargers as well.
Yeah, Duggan reminded me a lot of kind of a Johnny Manziel, Tim Tebow type. Super fun to watch in college. Plays with all of his heart out there. 120% effort guy, but not necessarily the physical talent to stick. You look at his national championship counterpart, Stetson Bennett. He chose to stay in Georgia for 8 senior years. He comes out and people, kind of faded him because his age. But you look what he did in the preseason and totally won Sean McVay's heart, and he's sticking in LA. So Duggan, I didn't really pay much attention to him, except for every time I'd see him in an ADP list, go, oh yeah, Max Duggan. He was the guy that played for TCU. So other than that, it's really Easton Stick as the QB2 that kind of made me raise my eyebrows a little bit, because what if something happens to Justin Herbert? That's quite an offense to step into. You have 4 legit wide receiver options. You have Austin Eckler. Josh Kelly's not a slouch. The defense should be a little bit better. And Kellen Moore knows what to do with backup quarterbacks. Obviously, if he can win with Cooper Rush, he can win with Easton Stick. So that's another guy. We're talking deep leagues here, especially super flex and 2 quarterbacks. If you're in Dynasty and you have a 40-round draft, there's no reason not to take a flyer and throw out something on Easton Stick just to handcuff him to Justin Herbert in that situation there.
Yeah, I love it. I got to shout out my boy Chase Daniel, Missouri all-time great QB. He was with the Chargers the last couple of years. I had him stacked behind Justin Herbert in any league. I had Herbert because I was like, hey, if he gets in there, the guy knows how to play. He can get you some stats. He's in a solid offense. And now with him, not technically retired yet, but not on a roster, Easton Stick taking over that QB2 role. So he's a guy that's moved up in my mind now that he's moved up to that number two role for them. So like that. So let's jump in here to wide receivers. Kansas City, not a cut, but Justin Ross makes the 53-man roster. Everybody's darling out of Clemson, had a huge freshman year. Everybody, Devi, was all over him, loved him. His guys had all kinds of injury problems, and people are just waiting for him to pop. And, of course, you get him on the Chiefs with Patrick Mahomes, and that just, that mess of what's the Chiefs wide receiver room look like. People were talking up Justin Ross today. Everybody was all about him. I know you brought him up earlier.
Yeah, they've got 7 wide receivers in that room. I wrote about Justin Ross on Player Profiler today. What a great story. Comes in as a freshman, receives 1,000 yards, 9 touchdowns, averages 21.7 yards per reception in a wide receiver room with T. Higgins and Hunter Renfrow, and he's competing for touches with Travis Etienne. He totally showed out and had the freshman breakout that everybody dreams of. 6'4", 205. The guy's a prototype, like red zone target. He's a deep threat. There's nothing not to love about the guy. And then they find out he's got 2 fused vertebrae. He has to have surgery for that. He comes back from that, and then he breaks his foot. He spends all year last year as an undrafted free agent rehabbing, and the Chiefs got to watch him up close. They kept him in their facilities. He did his rehab. He did everything that he was supposed to do. And what happens? He comes out and he shows everybody in preseason this year that he is the guy that we all thought he was in 2018 when he helped Clemson win a national championship as a freshman. So I love Justin Ross. I've taken him everywhere that I can, just with the hopes that he would make the roster. But Justin Watson also made the 53-man, and they didn't cut. They made a couple cuts because they had a lot of guys in camp, but they kept 7 wide receivers, which is absolutely nuts. But I love the Justin Ross story. I'm a Raiders fan. The Chiefs make me feel very bad, but Justin Ross and Deneric Prince are 2 guys that I really, really got behind this year, and I just love to see it. I want him to have a great career. He's a good kid and just easy to root for.
Another former SMU standout, James Prochet, got cut by the Ravens. He's a guy I kind of was stashing the last couple of years, thinking he might get a shot and break out. They've kind of called it quits with him and kind of moved on from there. Robbie Anderson, now chosen, has changed his name. The former Panthers great. He was cut by the Dolphins today. That really opens the door for Braxton Berrios and Cedric Wilson to fight it out for the 3 and 4. What do you think about those guys? I've been grabbing Braxton Berrios for about 2 to 3 weeks on waiver wires lately, especially leagues that give you points for punt and kick returns. I think he's a guy who can get some special team points, and I think he has a shot to possibly be that number 3 wide receiver there. So he's a deep stash for me in leagues.
Yeah, and if you play in a league that gives points for special teams, for punt returns and kick returns, which I know there are some advocates for leagues like that on Twitter. Braxton Berrios is one of those guys that I look at and I think he's much better in the NFL than he is in fantasy. He's one of those guys where every time you watch a game of the team that he's playing in, you hear his name. but it's only a couple of times a game. It might be 2 or 3 receptions, but every one of them is really, really important. So if you have that special teams upside in your league, absolutely Braxton Berrios is somebody to roster. I wouldn't probably look for him to have a huge role, but he's definitely talented. I guess the Jets, when he was with the Jets and the Jaguars, they're picking their spots with him because he'll surprise you. He'll come out in a 4 receiver set and just all of a sudden, like, there's the first down that you needed, that kind of thing. So I like Berrios a lot. The other guy was
Cedric Wilson, who formerly of the Cowboys. They restructured his deal, but he looks like he's going to be on the roster. He's going to have a shot to also either be that number 3 wide receiver, kind of him and Berrios kind of fighting it out.
And Wilson has always been a guy that you just knew with the right opportunity, like Gallup going down or something like that in Dallas, he could do something more than what he's been allowed to do. But I think he fits perfectly in that role as, 3rd, 4th, 5th wide receiver on a team. Not necessarily, unless you're in a huge deep league, not somebody that I would target. But if something happens to Calvin Ridley, or if something happens to Zay Jones, look for one of those guys to kind of step in and be good enough to fill in some points for you if you're missing somebody.
A couple undrafted free agents that made the rosters that people kind of were jumping on, a little hype on Twitter, was Jason Brownlee made the Jets roster, and also Mitchell Tinsley, former Penn State guy, made the Washington Commanders roster. So those are two guys that are, they're kind of down the list, but again, 2 guys that you could throw in your taxi squad, wait them out, and see if they can eventually make their way into, a little bit more playing time down the road.
Yeah, Commanders like their Penn State wide receivers. And Brownlee, I took in a deep league. I did a campus to Canton draft, and in the NFL portion of it, round about the 28th, 29th round out of 33, I was like, I'm taking Brownlee. I'm getting that guy. He had a good camp.
Colts made a couple cuts. Michael Strachan is going to be back and forth on their taxi practice squad back in play. He was cut again. They might bring him back on the practice squad. Rashad Perryman, James Washington, 2 older guys that have had a lot of chances that they look like they're pretty much done as far as the fantasy space is concerned, as they just keep going team to team to team. So those guys gone. If you were still holding out hope for Denzel Mims after the Jets traded him to the Lions, that was, washed today as he was cut by the Lions. I'm not a Denzel Mims guy. I wasn't coming out. I know some people still holding on to some shares, hoping he one day makes it, but he was cut today. And then my guy, Brian Edwards, former South Carolina standout. I love this guy. I love his profile. I love his size. Obviously, he just doesn't get it because now he's just bouncing around again. And I thought him being on the Saints, being with Derek Carr, where his best season was with the Raiders. He had that one really good year where he actually had some really highlight plays that got called back for penalties. I thought he had a chance to break out. When he went to Atlanta, I was like, ooh, he can be Atlanta's number 2. I love it. Then he got cut. I was like, this is amazing. I can't believe this. And then he went to the Chiefs. I was like, oh, Chiefs, here we go. Here's a chance. Nope. And then ended up on the Saints. And to me, this was the chance for him with that wide receiver core that he might be able to slide in as 3-4 and then push his way up if Michael Thomas got hurt again or some things like that. And he got cut by the Saints today, just absolutely crushing me. And now I'm having to go through every one of my lineups and drop them, even though I don't want to. It's final roster cuts coming for me as well. And it's just like, I don't know if I can hold him any longer. The guy's still only 23 years old, super young. But at this point, being through 6-7 teams, I just don't know if he's ever going to get it. I think I might have to finally cut bait.
I want to say this would be his 4th year. I was all hyped for him to have a 2nd year breakout, and then we traded him to the Falcons. I want to say for a 3rd rounder, but don't hold me to that. And then he didn't do anything with the Falcons, but I mean, unless you're Drake London or Kyle Pitts, not a lot of people are going to do much with the Falcons. And then he goes to the Saints, and just like you said, He's reunited with Derek Carr. He had some incredible catches. He's good in against zone coverage, but you have to be somebody that can beat press man. You have to be somebody that can get yourself open, create for yourself. And I don't know if he was able to find that level in the NFL. But as far as like finding himself in a zone on a 3rd down and 15 where he's going to be able to make like a diving catch and get your yards for you, that's what he did really, really well. He and Zay Jones on that Raiders team had some spectacular game-saving catches that allowed Derek Carr to, stack up his game-winning drives that, he's known in some circles for when people are being honest with themselves. But yeah, I had hopes for him too. Maybe something went wrong with the Michael Thomas comeback. And then you're looking at Rashid Shaheed and Brian Edwards, and Carr could throw to Juwan Johnson and Alvin Kamara, and they were putting something together there. Obviously, nobody's overtaking Olave, but he could have been something, and it was sad to see him go. But hey, maybe the Raiders cut Keelan Cole today. Maybe they're looking at Brian Edwards, bring him back into the room.
I'd love to see him get on a chance. The one deep sleeper, a lot of people kind of started picking up a little momentum in the preseason was A.T. Perry out of Wake Forest for the Saints. He's a guy I like a lot. I wrote an article about him pre-draft coming out of Wake Forest for DLF. I just really think he is a pure X receiver that can play on the outside. I like him on that Saints team. He made the final roster. Now, does that mean he's going to be fantasy relevant this year? I have no idea, but he's a guy I definitely like. A guy I was targeting mid to late rounds in rookie drafts, and a guy I'm stashing on taxi squads everywhere because I just think he's got some ability. He's a guy that produced 3 straight years in college. So he's a guy I'm kind of keeping an eye on. So jumping on the final here, we're going to jump tight ends. The big tight end news of the day was the Denver Broncos said they were going to cut Albert Okwuonu, my guy Albert O from Missouri. I love this guy, pure talent, great size, just never has been able to make it with the Broncos. They were going to cut him, and then the last second came out that they traded him to the Philadelphia Eagles along with a 7th-round pick in 2025 for a 6th-rounder in 2025. He joins the Eagles. I love him on that offense. Obviously, that team is loaded. That offensive loaded. Dallas Goedert. But, man, Albert O, he is not a blocker. He is just not a blocker. But, again, now you get him on a team where maybe he can play and be that second guy. I love Albert O. Fantasy-wise, I don't know if he's going to be relevant much, if at all. But I do like him in that group. I hope he actually is successful. If for some reason Dallas Goedert goes down again like he did last year, I think there's a chance that Albert O maybe becomes relevant, especially in some start 2 tight end or big tight end premium leagues where he was a touchdown machine in college at Mizzou. So Albert O is a guy that I still am not giving up on. I wanted to see a change of scenery last year. I was hoping the Broncos would move him. I like the idea. Again, a lot of mouths to feed in Philly, but injuries can happen, and there's a good chance with this kind of offense, I think he could fit in.
Yeah, and who's his competition behind Dallas Goedert? Jake Stoll, Calcaterra. So, yeah, 2 years ago, everybody was, once Noah Fant left Denver, everybody was totally in on Albert O. He's another guy that I wrote about on Player Profiler today. What was funny is I wrote my piece about him, and then I went and I was writing my piece about Justin Ross, and in the middle, he went from being waived, like I had written, waiting to be published, and then I wrote Justin Ross and came back, and all of a sudden he's been traded, and I had to go in and edit everything out and totally flip the article to him being traded. I had my shares of Albert O last year. I was thinking, this kid with Russell Wilson, he's gonna do big things, especially after what he did in 2021. Nope, he got totally usurped by Greg Dulcich. And so Dulcich was the incumbent there. You knew it. As soon as Peyton brought Troutman in, you knew that the writing was on the wall for Albert O. And then he goes out and he has 109 yards and a touchdown in the last preseason game. Like, hey, everybody, I haven't gone anywhere yet. We know that he's talented. So yeah, absolutely, grab that dude, stash him, and if anything happens to Goddard, there you go. Alberto is the man, because I don't think Jake Stoll or Calcaterra are going to be fighting with Alberto for touches at all. And I really did get good at spelling Okwuegbunam. It's harder to say than it is to write now.
It absolutely is. I butcher it all the time. I hate to say it. Even being a Missouri guy, I butcher his name all the time. It's so hard to say just the way it works together. But yeah, I love him. I love it as a stash. I love him in a new place. I think he can work out. And like I said, the biggest knock on him is he's just not a very good blocker. He just isn't. So as long as you can use him as your second tight end where he's more in the passing game, the guy's 6'4", 260, runs a 4.49 40. I mean, he was an absolute touchdown machine at Missouri for Drew Lock. Drew Lock, every time needed a big play, a touchdown, he went to Albert O. I just love the idea of him getting a new spot here. And like you said, this is a big-time offense. If Goddard gets hurt, Albert O is playable. He's not even playable. He could end up being pretty relevant on a good team. So he's my favorite pickup. If somebody's out on him, go get him. If he's sitting on your waiver wire, go get him. I like that move a ton. Just a couple as we'll finish up here as we're getting to the hour mark. Miami converted wide receiver to tight end Elijah Higgins. He was kind of a deep sleeper people were talking about. He got cut today by the Dolphins. And then another guy that I was kind of in on taking late in drafts was Zach Kuntz out of Old Dominion, the old Penn State tight end who just absolutely lit up the combine, had a perfect RAS score for a tight end. The guy, I mean, he's got size, he's got speed. I'm not sure what the problem is, but the Jets really deep at tight end. They have a ton of guys in that locker room. He ended up getting cut. So he's a guy I'm keeping an eye out on waivers to see where he ends up, because I still talent rules in the NFL, and I think someone's going to give that guy a shot at some point. And the last guy I thought was really interesting was the Steelers cut Zach Gentry, who's been there for a while, with a drafting of Darnell Washington. They've got Freiermuth, Darnell Washington, and then they kept Connor Hayward, Cam Hayward's brother, the rookie last year out of Michigan State. They're keeping him as a fullback / third tight end. He was really interesting in the preseason. They targeted him a decent amount. He got a decent amount of carries in the backfield where they went 2 tight end sets with Washington and Muth and put him in the backfield and ran a power set where they gave him handoffs. So he's a guy that if he's sitting out there for you, really interesting, especially since the Steelers decided to only keep 3 running backs, kept from McFarland for special teams and kick returns, and then they've got Jalen Warren and obviously Najee Harris. But Hayward technically is their 4th running back / fullback / third tight end. So he's an interesting guy that seems like they want to figure out how to use him. Again, you're not going to take him in a normal 10-team league, 12-team league, but if you're getting into deeper leagues where you can get a guy like that, he's an interesting guy to stash. I picked him up last year and put him on a couple taxi squads, and with Gentry gone and then making some moves, he's a guy I like as well.
Yeah, I like Hayward a lot. I liked him coming out of college. The only problem with him is he's a tweener in every sense of the word. He's too big to be a running back. He's not quite tall enough to be a tight end. He's a little bit more athletic than you need to be a fullback. I think that his destiny was to be on defense, and he just fought it and stayed on the offensive side of the ball. But yeah, I was watching him closely coming into the draft last year, and he just did not fit anything that I was trying to do in any of my dynasty rookie drafts or anything. But I have him on my sleeper watch list on the sleeper app because he's so interesting to me. And I almost wish that I was in, like a 40-man roster kind of situation where I could just sit there and, have him next to my Alex Collins, RIP, draft that I make just, to honor guys. I like making draft picks like that where, hey, nothing's ever going to work out, but I just like knowing that I have him on my team. That's not to say that nothing can work out with Hayward. I think, maybe if you have him in a best ball league, he spikes and has a 15-point day, that kind of thing. But yeah, I really like him. And Kuntz was a surprise. Kuntz was a surprise. The only thing is Yeboah just beat him out. That was, you got Tyler Conklin and you got Yeboah, and Yeboah just said, "This is my job as the 4th tight end, not yours." And that's unfortunate for Kuntz.
Yeah, I think he ends up somewhere. He's a guy I'm not cutting yet because I think somebody will definitely pick him up. That's going to do it for us here on the Stew with JT Brew. I want to thank Brendon Booth for joining me. Brandon, go ahead and tell everybody where they can find you, the stuff you do, where they can find your articles, all that good stuff.
All right, so you can find me on Twitter at BigBonedFFB. I also have a Substack under the same name. I do a little bit of content. I just dropped my first YouTube video, YouTube at BigBonedFFB. I write for DynastyPros.com, DynastyProsFootball.com. We're about to debut a Dynasty Dilemmas, which is an article format that we do on Dynasty Pros. I'm about to debut a Dynasty Dilemmas podcast for Dynasty Pros. In that, I'm going to have a guest on with me, and we're going to go over the pros and cons and debate on what to do with a guy in Devi. Probably 2 per podcast. So look for that. And then I write the AFC news for playerprofiler.com. There's no byline, so you just kind of have to look for AFC West players. And when you go into their profile on playerprofiler.com, any new news starting the last couple weeks moving forward, just know that I wrote that. So if you want to find that, then look up AFC West players on Player Profiler. But I wanted to say thank you so much for having me, JT. And it's good to talk football. I love it.
Yeah, I'm pumped about that new show that's going to be on Dynasty Pro's YouTube channel because I want to come on there. We've talked about me coming on there and doing some of those Dynasty Dilemmas. We've got articles up on the website, but that's stuff we want to do on the YouTube page. So that's also another great thing you can add on the Dynasty Pros YouTube channel. Check me out. I think next Tuesday, we were doing Monday shows in the summer, but I think we're going to do Tuesday shows for the Devi show with me, with Tommy and SC. Always do the Devi show for Dynasty Pros, so make sure you look for me on there. All my content on DLF. I'm an IDP ranker, all kinds of IDP articles and stuff coming out. Look for that. I've also, for Fantrax, my buddy John Glenn, Commissioner Evaluation Podcast. Check us out on their YouTube channel. I jump in and co-host over there with him. You can find all the Stews with JT Brew on the Dynasty Pros YouTube channel. Plus, you just look up the Stew with JT Brew on any of your favorite podcast channels, Spotify, Apple, any of that stuff. All that stuff is downloaded every week, so you can jump on and listen to that. You can look at me on X, or the Twitter, X-Twitter as I like to call it, at JT Orange, where you can find me talking about anything and everything fantasy football related. Go ahead and follow me there. Follow JT Brew Stew to follow the show so you can see every time a new show is coming out. I want to say once again, thanks for joining me, Brandon. It was a great show, talking cuts, big time moves. Some of these things are super important. Some of these are more deep dives on players. But you like to take a look, try to get that any edge you can whenever you're talking fantasy football with everybody. So everyone, thanks for joining us here on the Stew with JT Brew. We appreciate it. May all your draft picks hit and the trading never quit. We'll see you guys next time.
Thanks, JT.
You up on trades and why you move? You ain't designed to lose. Find you jumping over seemingly nothing, racking up points makes the game a little more fun to watch. Can drop release. We started with